Good luck surviving, big boy. Her voice cracked through the night like a whip, sharp and cruel, carried by the roar of the engine. I stood there in the glow of red taillights as the car peeled away, dust exploding into the humid air. Their laughter echoed until it melted into silence, leaving only the buzzing motel sign and the pounding of my own heart. Bags slipped from my hands, thudding against the cracked pavement. The air stank of gasoline and wet earth. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, my throat burned, my legs refused to move. I was alone. No money, no passport, no phone. Just me, abandoned in a foreign country. And then, like a needle sliding into my skin, the realization hit. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a prank. It was betrayal, planned, deliberate, final. But let me take you back to where it started. To the place that looked like paradise. If you had seen the pictures, you'd think it was perfect. The ocean was turquoise, waves licking the white sand in lazy rolls. Palm trees swayed like dancers, their fronds whispering in the hot breeze. Cocktails clinked with ice, umbrellas sticking out like toys. Even the air smelled of salt and sweet coconut lotion. Mexico was every glossy promise a vacation could offer. But beneath the shine, something was rotten. My wife wouldn't meet my eyes. Her mother, Marissa, smirked every time I opened my mouth. They shared laughter sharp enough to cut skin, laughter that told me I was the joke. Still, I lied to myself. I told myself it was stress. Work had drained me, marriage had its storms. Maybe a few days in the sun would heal us. Maybe love just needed a beach to breathe again. But when I reached for her hand, Celesta pulled away as though my touch burned. When I tried to laugh, Marissa stabbed me with words disguised as jokes. You're sweating already? Can't handle the heat? Or guess some men just aren't built for adventure. Their smiles sparkled, but their eyes were knives. And yet, I clung to denial. I kept telling myself it was nothing, that if I just played along, if I just swallowed the sting, everything would smooth over. I didn't know I was being walked into a trap. On the third night, they insisted on leaving the resort. Too crowded, they claimed. One night in a quieter place. I wanted to protest, but the way they smiled, tight, secretive, shut me up. We pulled into a peeling, yellow-painted motel on the edge of nowhere. The neon sign flickered and buzzed like an insect, half dead. The parking lot reeked of dust and exhaust. The air clung heavy to my skin, sticky with heat. I shifted the bags on my shoulder, sweat dripping down my back. And that was when it happened. The slam of doors. The cough of an engine. Tires screeching against gravel. I turned, blinking through the haze, just in time to see her face, my wife's face, leaning out the window. Her lips curled into that cruel little smile. Good luck surviving, big boy. The sound of their laughter chased me as the car disappeared into the night, leaving me stranded in the buzz of neon and the taste of betrayal thick on my tongue. For a few seconds, panic owned me. My pulse raced, my vision blurred, my lungs clawed for air. I wanted to scream, to run after them, to beg. But then something shifted inside me. The fear froze, hardened, became something sharper. In that silence, I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. And that night, in the ruins of what was supposed to be paradise, my story of revenge was born. The first night in that filthy motel felt endless. The sheets smelled of mold. The ceiling fan rattled like bones. I lay there staring at the cracked plaster, my mind racing. Any moment now, I thought. They'd come back. It had to be a mistake. Maybe they were teaching me a lesson. Maybe they were drunk. Maybe. But dawn came, and the parking lot outside was still empty. By noon, reality set in. They weren't coming back. I searched my bag, desperate. No passport. No wallet. Even my phone was gone. They'd taken everything. My entire life, stripped down to the clothes on my back. Why? That question pounded in my skull harder than hunger, harder than thirst. Why would they do this? I stumbled to the front desk, trying to explain in broken Spanish, but the clerk just shrugged. I saw pity in his eyes, and something else. He'd seen this before. That night, I sat on the curb outside, listening to the buzz of insects and distant dogs barking. And then I remembered the way Lesta smiled on the flight here, typing on her phone, hiding the screen from me. The way she whispered with her mother when they thought I was asleep. Pieces started falling into place, each one cutting deeper than the last. It wasn't random. It wasn't a prank. She wanted me gone. And then, like poison, the truth seeped in. Back home, there had been a man. Someone she kept just as a friend. I never liked him, never trusted the way she laughed at his jokes, the way she brushed off my questions. His name was Dia Clan. I saw it so clearly now. She didn't just leave me here to suffer. She left me because she had already replaced me. While I was sweating in the Mexican heat, hungry and desperate, she was probably in his arms. Safe, comfortable, laughing about the fool she'd abandoned. The rage that hit me that night was like fire and ice at the same time. I wanted to scream, to smash the walls, to burn that motel to the ground. But instead, I went quiet. Because now, I understood the rules of the game. They thought I was weak, disposable, but I would prove them wrong. I whispered it to myself, a promise etched into my bones. One day, I'll come back. And when I do, she won't even see me coming. The first week nearly killed me. I wandered the streets with nothing but the clothes on my back, a body that hadn't eaten in 2 days, and a heart pounding with panic. The heat pressed down like a fist. My throat felt like sandpaper, every step heavier than the last. People glanced at me, some curious, some suspicious. I was just another lost foreigner, easy to ignore, easier to rob. And more than once, they tried. On the third night, 2 men cornered me in an alley. They smelled of cheap beer and cigarettes, their knives glinting in the neon glow. I thought I was finished. But desperation can make you savage. I fought harder than I ever had in my life, scratching, biting, slamming one man's head against the wall until his knife clattered to the ground. When they ran, my knuckles were raw and bleeding, but for the first time, I felt alive. Survival wasn't about luck. It was about becoming someone they couldn't break. I started working odd jobs, sweeping floors in a bar, hauling crates at the docks, anything that put a few pesos in my pocket. I learned enough Spanish to barter for food, to dodge the scams, to say no, with enough weight in my voice that people thought twice. At night, I slept wherever I could. Sometimes a park bench. Sometimes the storeroom behind a cantina, the air thick with the smell of spilled tequila. Once, in a church pew, where the priest looked at me with both pity and warning, as if he sensed the storm brewing inside me. And through it all, I kept replaying her voice in my head. Good luck surviving, big boy. Every time I wanted to quit, every time hunger twisted my stomach into knots, those words lit a fire inside me. But survival changed more than just my body. It rewired my mind. I stopped being the man who begged for scraps of affection. I stopped being the husband who ignored the signs, who trusted lies wrapped in pretty smiles. Piece by piece, I shed him. In his place grew someone colder, someone sharper, someone who could watch, wait, and strike when the time was right. One evening, I sat at the edge of the pier, watching the ocean swallow the sun. My hands were blistered, my clothes stiff with salt and sweat. A fisherman beside me passed me a bottle of mezcal. I drank, the burn searing my throat, and he laughed, slapping my back. Strong, he said, and for the first time, I believed it. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was training. Training for the moment I'd step back into the world I'd been cast out of. Training for the day I'd look into her eyes again, Celesta, the woman who left me to rot, and make her understand what it feels like to lose everything. And the longer I stayed in Mexico, the more dangerous I became. By the time a year had passed, Mexico had burned away the man I used to be. My hands were calloused, my shoulders broader, my gaze harder. Hunger and sweat had carved me into something lean, something dangerous. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was studying, watching people, learning how trust could be bought, how fear could be planted, how lies could move men like pieces on a board. Every night, after a day of breaking my body on the docks, I'd lie awake on a thin mattress in a rented room above a bar. Rats scurried in the walls. The smell of cheap beer and frying oil drifted up from below, and I would replay everything. Celesta's laughter, Marissa's smirk, that one line, sharp as glass. Good luck surviving, big boy. I let those words burn into me until they stopped hurting and started sharpening me. One evening, as I counted the crumpled pesos I'd saved, the decision came to me as clear as the moonlight spilling through the cracked window. It was time. Time to go home. But not to beg for answers. Not to confront her with shouting or tears. No, that man was dead. The one who would step back onto American soil would be something else entirely. A shadow. A ghost. A reckoning. The plan started simple, money first. Every spare coin went into a metal tin hidden under a loose floorboard. I stopped drinking. I stopped wasting. I worked longer shifts, carried heavier loads, even fought in an underground ring one night just to double my savings. Pain became nothing more than a transaction. A bruise here, a cracked rib there. All of it traded for the one thing I needed most, the power to go back. Weeks turned into months, and the tin grew heavier. Until finally, I held enough in my hands to buy a one-way ticket. The night before I left, I stood at the edge of the pier where I'd once nearly collapsed from hunger. The ocean whispered against the rocks, the air thick with salt. I thought about staying. I thought about building a new life, leaving the ghosts behind. But ghosts don't let you rest. Not when they're laughing at you. I closed my eyes and saw her face again, smiling at someone else. Dia Clan, the man she had chosen instead of me. My jaw clenched. My fingers curled into fists. There would be no peace until she understood what it meant to be abandoned. Until she lost everything the way she'd taken everything from me. When I boarded that plane the next morning, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was ready. And somewhere, thousands of miles away, Celesta had no idea that her comfortable little world was about to start crumbling. Because her husband, the man she thought was dead, forgotten, erased, was on his way home. When the plane wheels touched American soil, my heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. Because I wasn't returning home. Not really. That version of me, the man who begged for love, who believed in promises, was gone. I was stepping into enemy territory. And the war had already begun. I didn't go straight to her. No, that would have been too easy, too loud. Revenge isn't about explosions, it's about erosion. Quiet, steady, relentless. Until the walls crack on their own. The first step was watching. I rented a cheap car, parked it 2 blocks away from the little suburban house where Celesta now lived with him, Dia Clan. A picture-perfect street, trimmed lawns, white fences, neighbors waving as they jogged by. On the surface, it was everything I used to think I wanted. But through the scope of my binoculars, I saw the truth. She had moved on without hesitation, smiling at him, cooking dinner with him, kissing him on the porch like the past had never existed. It should have hurt, but it didn't. Watching her pretend I'd never been real only made me colder. So I started with the little things. Their mailbox, tampered with. Letters stolen, bills misplaced. A key left in their car door overnight, inviting thieves. A gas line loosened just enough to fill the house with the faintest whiff of danger. Never enough to kill, just enough to make them uneasy. I became the shadow behind their lives, the itch they couldn't scratch. Soon, things escalated. Dia Clan got a call from his bank, suspicious charges he couldn't explain. Their internet went down for days. Their credit cards mysteriously declined at the grocery store. At night, their dog barked furiously at nothing, but I knew better. The dog smelled me. Celesta started to crack first. I saw it in the way she looked over her shoulder when she took out the trash, the way she double-checked the locks, the way her smile slipped when she thought no one was watching. She didn't know it yet, but she could feel me. And then came my favorite touch, a package on their doorstep. Inside, a cheap plastic souvenir from Mexico. A little snow globe with a crumbling motel inside. The words, Viva Cancun, etched on the base. No note. No explanation. When she unwrapped it, I was parked across the street, watching through tinted glass. Her hands trembled. Her face drained of color. Dia Clan asked what was wrong, but she shook her head, hiding it. Oh, she remembered. She remembered exactly. And as I drove away, the corner of my mouth curled upward for the first time in months. Because this was only the beginning. By the second month of watching them, I knew their routine better than they did. What time they left for work. When they argued. Which nights they made love. Which nights she turned her back on him in bed. Knowledge is power. And in my hands, knowledge became a weapon. Declan was confident, cocky, the kind of man who thought he'd won the prize by stealing another man's wife. But arrogance has cracks. And all it takes is the right pressure to split them wide open. So I became that pressure. It started with messages. Anonymous, of course. A slip of paper under his windshield. Does she ever tell you the whole truth? A text from a block number. She's not who you think she is. At first, he brushed it off. But suspicion is a seed, and I kept watering it. One night, while Celesta was at the grocery store, I slipped into their backyard. The dog recognized me instantly, tail wagging, not barking. That was useful. I left a pair of men's cufflinks half buried near the bedroom window. Not mine. Bought secondhand at a pawn shop. The kind that screamed, "Another man has been here." Declan found them 2 days later. I watched from across the street as he stormed into the house, shouting, waving the cufflinks in her face. She denied it, of course, tears, swearing, rage. But doubt had already sunk its claws into him. And then I added fuel. A week later, I sent him photos. Blurry, but convincing. Celesta at a cafe, sitting across from a man. Laughing, leaning in close. The man was no one, just a stranger I paid $20 to sit there. But through Declan's eyes, it was betrayal painted in black and white. Their fights grew louder, uglier. I could hear them through the walls, even from my parked car. Dishes breaking, doors slamming. Her voice shrill, his voice thunder. And Celesta? She started to look haunted. She'd stare out the window at night, as if expecting something in the dark. Maybe she felt me. Maybe she remembered that motel. But the beauty of it was this. She didn't suspect me. Not yet. To her, I was a ghost she'd buried in Mexico. Declan, though, he began to crumble. His swagger faded. He checked her phone when she wasn't looking, grilled her about errands, followed her car once or twice, convinced she was meeting someone else. I had turned them against each other, brick by brick. The final touch came one rainy Thursday night. I broke into his car, left a lipstick-stained napkin tucked under the passenger seat, and smeared just enough perfume onto it to reek of another woman. When he found it, the explosion was nuclear. Through the cracked blinds, I watched the scene unfold. Celesta screaming that she was innocent, Declan shoving the napkin in her face, calling her every name in the book. Her tears didn't move him. His rage didn't stop. By the time he stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled, I knew it. Their perfect little love story was bleeding out. And I was the one holding the knife. I'd broken their house of glass, one crack at a time. But there was another player on the board. Marissa. Her laugh haunted me as much as Celesta's betrayal. That sharp, mocking voice in the Mexican night. Good luck surviving, big boy. She thought she was clever, untouchable, a queen in her little suburban kingdom. It was time to remind her that even queens can bleed. Marissa loved appearances. She thrived on neighborhood gossip, charity luncheons, fancy church events where she could wear pearls and smile sweetly while cutting people down with a whisper. But beneath the perfume and lipstick, I knew her weaknesses. The drinking, the debts, the way she gambled online at night when she thought no one was watching. I started with whispers. Anonymous letters slipped into the mailboxes of her closest friends. A few screenshots of her gambling transactions. Easy to fabricate, easier to believe. Soon, the same women who used to cling to her words were avoiding her at the grocery store, crossing the street instead of saying hello. Her kingdom was cracking. But I didn't stop there. One evening, I broke into her car, left an empty vodka bottle rolling under the driver's seat. A week later, another bottle, tucked into her gym bag. She began to notice, began to panic. "I don't drink that much," she snapped at Celesta during one of their visits. But Celesta's eyes, they didn't look convinced. Then came the night of the fundraiser. I watched from the shadows as Marissa stood at the podium, pearls gleaming under the lights, giving one of her self-righteous speeches. I'd bribed a bartender earlier, slipped him a little something to make sure her glass was never empty. By the end, her words slurred, her hands trembled, and when she tried to descend the stage, she stumbled, nearly fell into the arms of the mayor's wife. Gasps, whispers, phones out, recording. By the next morning, the video was everywhere. Marissa Martinez drunk at charity gala. Comments flooded in. Her name was dirt. She tried to deny it, of course. But denial means nothing when the evidence looks so real. And just to drive the nail deeper, I left one final gift on her porch. A cheap motel key, taped to an envelope with photos, blurry shots of her walking into a bar late at night, talking to a man half her age. The photos weren't real, but the doubt was. When Celesta saw them, she turned cold. When Declan saw them, he laughed cruelly. And Marissa? She sat alone in her perfect house, curtains drawn, drowning in the very silence she once used to mock me. For the first time in her life, no one believed her. And I watched from across the street, hidden in the dark, smiling. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. Declan was unraveling. Marissa was disgraced. And Celesta, well, Celesta was next. I watched as she tried to hold her perfect little life together, her nails digging into the seams, her smile cracking like porcelain. But no matter how hard she clung, everything she touched was slipping through her fingers. It started at work. She'd always bragged about her position, how she was irreplaceable, how her boss admired her charm. So I sent an email. Anonymous, of course. Screenshots of fake messages, intimate in tone, suggesting an affair with a married client. Nothing provable, but enough to raise eyebrows. Soon, the whispers began. A promotion she'd been promised vanished. Her boss stopped meeting her eyes. Then came Declan. Or rather, the end of Declan. All those seeds I'd planted, cufflinks, photos, lipstick, finally bloomed. He stormed out one night and didn't come back. She called him, begged him, screamed at him, but his silence was louder than any insult. And in that silence, she realized she was alone. But I wasn't finished. I tampered with her car, nothing deadly, just enough to make it stall in traffic, horns blaring, drivers cursing. I redirected her mail, so important bills went unpaid. Collection notices piled up. Her bank account froze from suspicious activity I'd orchestrated weeks earlier. Piece by piece, I dismantled her stability. At night, she stopped sleeping. I knew because her lights stayed on until dawn, curtains twitching as she peeked outside again and again. Sometimes I'd leave little reminders, a single red rose on her doorstep, petals bruised. A voicemail of her own laughter, recorded years ago, distorted, untraceable. She was cracking. I could see it in the way she moved, twitchy and restless, jumping at shadows. In the way she snapped at Marissa, who was too busy drowning in her own shame to offer support. And then came the final stroke. One evening, she arrived home to find her bedroom mirror shattered, glass glittering across the floor. On the wall, scrawled in red marker, for simple words. Good luck surviving, big girl. Not blood, not violence. Just a message. A memory. When she saw it, her scream ripped through the night, sharp enough to make the neighbors rush to their windows. She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, rocking back and forth, muttering my name under her breath. Except she didn't know it was me. Not yet. To her, I was a faceless monster. A curse. A ghost she'd created with her own cruelty. And that was the beauty of it. Because the more she broke, the stronger I felt. Every tear, every sleepless night, every paranoid glance over her shoulder, it was mine. I owned it. Celesta, the woman who once laughed as she left me to rot in Mexico, was finally learning what it meant to be abandoned. And the best part? She still had no idea the man pulling the strings was her husband. The game had gone on long enough. I'd taken her job, her lover, her peace of mind. She was a hollow version of the woman I once knew, paranoid, exhausted, broken. But she still hadn't seen me. Not really. That was about to change. It happened on a rainy Saturday afternoon. The kind of day where the sky hangs low and gray, where the streets glisten like black glass. I was standing in line at a coffee shop, hood pulled low, the smell of roasted beans heavy in the air. And then, I felt it. That chill, that shift in the air when the past collides with the present. She walked in. Celesta. Her hair was tangled, makeup smeared as if she hadn't slept in days. She looked smaller, somehow. Not the radiant woman who once sneered at me, but a ghost dragging herself through the door. She ordered quickly, voice trembling, hands shaking as she fumbled with her wallet. And then she turned. Our eyes met. For a heartbeat, she froze. Confusion first, then disbelief, then terror blooming wide across her face. Her lips parted, soundless, as if her brain refused to believe what her eyes were screaming. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just looked at her, calm, steady, unblinking. Her coffee slipped from her hand, splashing hot liquid across the tile. The cup rolled, bumping against my shoe. She stumbled back, whispering, No, no, it can't be. The barista asked if she was okay, but Celesta didn't answer. She was locked on me, trembling, as though seeing a ghost crawl out of her nightmares. And in a way, she was right. Because the man she left in Mexico had died. The one standing before her now, this version of me, was something she had created. I stepped closer, slow and deliberate. I didn't smile, didn't speak, but the look in my eyes told her everything. The broken mirror, the roses, the packages, the whispers that shredded her life apart piece by piece. It was me. Her breath hitched, a sob caught in her throat. She clutched her purse like a shield, backing away, muttering, "You're dead. You're supposed to be dead." I leaned in, close enough that only she could hear, my voice low, steady, sharp as a blade. "Good luck surviving, big girl." Her knees buckled. She dropped to the floor, gasping, shaking, clutching at the tiles as if they could save her from drowning. People rushed to help, but none of them understood. None of them saw the storm tearing through her mind. Only I did. And as I walked out into the rain, leaving her collapsed in that cafe, I knew the truth. She finally understood. She knew who had been haunting her. And there was no escape. Because the ghost she left behind in Mexico had come home. After the cafe, she didn't leave the house for days. Curtains drawn tight. Lights flickering on at strange hours. Neighbors whispering on the sidewalk, their voices carrying. "Something's wrong with her, she looks sick." And they were right. Celesta was unraveling. Every shadow in the hallway reminded her of me. Every creak of the floorboards made her flinch. A car door slamming outside. She'd jump, heart hammering. She taped over her windows, double-bolted her doors, unplugged the phone at night. But fear isn't something you can lock out. Fear doesn't live outside. Fear lives inside. And inside, she was drowning. Declan never came back. Marissa kept her distance, too consumed by her own ruined reputation. At work, whispers followed Celesta down every corridor. Once admired, now pitted. Once envied, now mocked. She had no friends, no allies, no one left to turn to. She was exactly where I wanted her, utterly, hopelessly alone. One night, I stood across the street in the rain, hood pulled low, the smell of wet asphalt heavy in the air. Through the glow of her living room window, I watched her curled up on the couch. A half-empty wine bottle on the table, her glass trembling in her hand. Her eyes locked on the door as though she was waiting for me to smash it down. But I never would. I didn't need to. Because the greatest revenge isn't about blood. It's about leaving someone to live in the ruins they built with their own hands. The next morning, the storm had passed. The sky was washed clean, the streets glittering with puddles. I walked up her driveway one last time. My boots left dark prints on the wet concrete. In my hand, an envelope. I slid it through the mail slot. Inside was nothing but a single photograph. Our wedding day. She in white, radiant, smiling as if forever was real. Me beside her, eyes filled with a love that no longer existed. On the back, for words in black ink. "We're even now? E. No threats. No demands. Just closure." I turned, walked away, and didn't look back. As I drove out of that neighborhood for the final time, I felt no triumph. No celebration. Just silence. Cold, clean silence. Because revenge isn't sweet. It isn't fireworks or flames. It's quiet. It's the knowledge that the person who once laughed at your pain now drowns in their own. Behind me, Celesta was clutching that photo with shaking hands. I imagined her dropping to her knees on the kitchen floor, sobbing, realizing the life she once destroyed had come back to destroy hers. That the man she had left to rot in Mexico hadn't just survived. He had become the ghost that stripped her world bare. She'd never recover. She'd never rebuild. And she would spend the rest of her life trapped inside the prison of her own fear, wondering if every shadow was me returning again. And me? I wasn't the broken man she abandoned. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was free.